We have another presentation from Professor or Dr. Jane, who's an associate professor and department chair, Department of Finance, Insurance and Real Estate School of Business at VCU. And please, is he in the room or is he doing it virtually?
I'm
here
here.
You are.
Yep.
I'm not looking
I'm right here.
audience. You were here. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Pleasure to be here. And the way I see my goal today is sort of take you sort of behind the technology behind these cryptocurrencies. We have been talking a whole lot about cryptocurrencies, but this is just one application of the technology that sort of runs this system. And the technology is kind of blockchain. And then you can see my movie up there. I thought afternoons are generally, like I teach, and my worst time of teaching is afternoon. Just because, I mean, you know the reasons after lunch. So I thought I'll show you a trailer, get you a little bit more excited and sort of answer any questions you may have regarding the technology. And then we can talk about some applications. I think I'll take you to a kind of historical path a little bit. Like historically, like if you think about the old economy where this was really, really small economies where everyone knew each other, we didn't have any trust issues. We always like knew who has the land, who owns that particular piece of property, who has that car and whatnot. And so when the transactions used to happen, there was no issues like, well, all right, I know you own the land, and so you're selling it, I completely trust that. Now what happened is, as time sort of evolved and these transactions continues to grow, and one thing that sort of made it even sort of interesting is this technology, right? I mean, now we can trade across the globe. I can have a counterparty in Japan. I don't know anything about that counterparty, but we can still get into this trading kind of relationship. So with that kind of speed of transaction and whatnot, the issue of trust continues to grow bigger and bigger. And that's why we needed these intermediaries, like the bank. Again, it's easier to talk about financial system because we can see money on both sides and so forth. So the bank, like for example, if I want to borrow money and being a poor professor and you guys have money and I can just, we can sort of have this trust issue, but you can deposit money in the bank, which then provides the service of trust. And then I can just go in and borrow it from the bank. But then there is some kind of a deadweight loss of the society. And that was the premise behind this idea of kind of Bitcoin and blockchain in particular. This is how we fix the trust issue. When the economy continued to grow, we just have this kind of intermediary layer that all these systems talk to this intermediary layer. It could be a bank, it could be like, let's say for a used car dealership could act as intermediary, right? And the problem with this centralized system is if you take out the centerpiece, then there is nothing holding on to the system. So it creates this gigantic risk, which we saw like in 2008 when the market starts crashing and so forth. And so the way to kind of, one of the ways to fix this issue is this blockchain technology. And I'll try to sort of go through this step by step. So let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say I want to sell my car, okay? So that's the transaction. I'm going to put that ad somewhere. Right now it's like Facebook Marketplace or what's that, Craigslist, right? And then the others can see the ad. But the problem in that system is people looking at my ad does not know if I own the car, right? I mean, I can just take a picture of your car and post it like I'm selling this car and just try to scam people. But here in this system, what happens is if every participant is on blockchain, you can see the computer transmits the order like, well, I'm going to sell this car, and it goes into this peer-to-peer network that knows that I have the car. Goes back to the old small economy where everyone knew who owns what. Here the system, because every car is unique, it has a unique VIN number, it has a unique kind of manufacturing kind of details and so forth. So I can separate a car from another car. So it's a unique property. And that is linked to a unique person into the system. And everyone in the system knows about it. So it sort of resolves that trust issue without need of a car dealership sort of vetting those kind of things, or a Carfax report kind of giving me information on that. Again, these intermediaries. But then once the system says, well, everything looks good, yeah, this person owns the car, then it's verified in the third stage. And then that new information is then added as a new block into the blockchain, and then it's transmitted to the outside world. Now, let's say if someone comes in and tries to buy the car, okay? And let's say I'm trying to sell the car for $20,000. So in my case, I'll give you the car, you give me $20,000. So again, the person requests like, okay, I'm interested in buying this car, sends this message to the system. The system has access to all details of this person, like all the bank accounts and so forth. So knows that this person has $20,000 to pay for the car. It's verified. Once the verification happens, we can automatically enter into a contract. The car is sold. Okay. And now in the blockchain, the car ownership of the car is then transferred to the new person, and this the buyer who paid me $20,000, I have $20,000 more in my account. He has $20,000 less. It's automatically updating the process without the need of intermediation. I mean, I'll take even a step back and sort of link it, kind of relate it to Google Docs. Like when we collaborate on any sort of a project, we work together on some document. And think about it, like all of us are making changes on this document. But every change we make, it's kind of transmitted to everyone, right? And then everyone has this copy of all these changes that we have made throughout the document. Now, if I am the bad player and say, well, you know what, I'm going to make a change in my document and say, well, this is the right copy. This is not going to work because everyone in the room has the copy of all the changes that has been made. So if a bad player comes in and tries to make changes, it's going to create red flags, just by definition of the blockchain. The only difference here is there's no intermediary. There's no one person. Like here, I mean, Google can definitely sort of take away all the documents from the Google Docs, and they own everything on the Google Docs at this point in time. So again, another way to sort of look at it, here A and B are transacting in this picture, but as soon as the transaction happens, entire system gets updated. Right? At every single transaction, everything gets updated. So then A cannot just deny, like, well, I never transacted with B. Guess what? Everyone else has a copy, like what you did. And so that's the power of blockchain. It's just trustless system because the trust is already programmed in, so we don't really need the intermediaries, right? Another sort of a graphic to sort of hit the point home pretty much. So again, a new transaction comes in, the verification nodes verifies the transaction, it's verified, a new block is created, added to the existing blockchain with all the history of past data. So everything is there, right from day one, Genesis block, to today. The entire history is within that blockchain. It's immutable. It cannot be changed without a majority attack, which, again, I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's very expensive to do that.
Dr. Jain,
Yeah.
for all these nodes, with them all being constantly updated, is that one of the causes for our need for more data centers? I mean, because it's not really sending it to my phone directly or my computer, the transaction. It's got to be archived somewhere that I have access to, right?
Actually, it is sending to your computer. So if you're a participant of the blockchain network, every participant in the network provides the technology.
So if I'm involved in a lot of blockchain technology, I'm going to need a more powerful computer or more storage, more...
You might need more advanced technologies eventually, but your computer is good enough.
Okay.
It just pulls in all the power together, and that's the power of the network. It's not going to ask you to buy a new computer. Just like Google Docs, where you had a copy, I had a copy. We didn't need a new powerful computer. It's just extra copy that was being kept.
Okay, I'm going to turn to Delegate Reed. He's got a follow-up.
But Senator Eben, I just wanted to clarify something, is that if I actually made a transaction from this phone to send a transaction to him, it's not going from this phone to that phone. It's going to a data center in Ashburn and then coming back here. So we just need to be clear that it's like there is an internet and there is a backbone capability. Whether or not it's actually archived in one of those is different. But 70% of the world's internet traffic flows through Ashburn, so it's very likely that if I'm doing a crypto transaction with you, it's not going from phone to phone, it's going to Ashburn and then coming back. And so yes, to your question, the advent of Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, data center, our just internet is driving increased data center demand.
Thank you.
Yeah, internet in general is. So I'll give you an example. Like I work on, in my, half of my job is to do research, and I'm more interested in understanding the banking systems and whatnot. And so I'll just just looking at the data from one of the banks, I realized for every customer, they have 800 data points. And that's a centralized system. Think about the failure of the centralized system. If it's just a single point of failure here, like going back to this sort of example here on the this first slide right there, where if that central system is hacked, all of the data is sort of gone. I mean, it takes a while to sort of get back. That's where the ransomware and everything. But if I had copies, like if I had 70,000 copies, I mean, I can pretty much put it together and bring it back to the system, right? So just quickly wrapping up here. So a few of the use cases, like for example, one of the application is, of course, we have been talking about cryptocurrencies, picked up because the price run up and a lot of interest in the space. A couple of countries also adopted Bitcoin as one of their official currencies. But I think, to me, the major application is like in smart contracts, in how we can sort of new ways of raising money, new ways of settling our existing contracts that we sort of get into pretty much every single day. Like here's an example. Like I flew a couple days ago and the flight got delayed. I had this insurance I've been buying after COVID. So the flights keeps getting canceled every once in a while. Now, the problem with the current system is I have to be on hold to talk to the agent, and the agent's job is to just somehow deny the claim, no matter what. I paid the insurance. I mean, I did whatever I can, and the flight was really delayed. I mean, everything is publicly recorded, but the company doesn't want to make that payment. Now, in this smart contract setup, we get into a smart contract with the company, and everyone, again, it's broadcasted to the network. Everyone knows I paid for the contract and the flight details. I'm flying through Southwest from Richmond to Atlanta at this time, right? All that information is publicly available. And then, as soon as the flight is delayed, all the conditions are met, I should get my payment. No questions asked. I mean, what's the point of me calling and waiting on the line forever? So again, a really good example of smart contract that can fix kind of real problems that exist right now. A lot of applications, and I'm not going to talk about a whole lot. My friend is going to cover some of those applications. But just to give you an example, like in real estate, there is so many, sorry.
We've got another follow-up.
So on the thing with the smart contract, and that all seems great, but can you imagine a way that it could be abused? Because one of the things that we have learned through legislating is that we can oftentimes, when we're doing legislation, we can think about the primary and the secondary impacts, but we also have to think about how someone is going to abuse it. Because it's like, okay, it seems really great that it's like I missed the flight, I paid for the insurance, and therefore I should get the money back into my credit card, my Bitcoin, or my account. But what we have to do is we have to think through how will somebody abuse this, because someone will sure try. So can you think through how somebody would abuse a smart contract to create fraud upon, based upon the insurance company or something along those lines?
Yeah, so in this network, the parties, like the trust is not an issue. The issue could be the product. I mean, I was thinking of examples as I was teaching. I mean, I came across those questions. One of the issues, one of the examples that I thought might happen is like, let's say a smart contract for delivering a product, like Amazon, right? I mean, delivering through drone at a given location. We don't know what the product is, but these smart contracts are automatically going to execute some of those things. That could be an example where I really don't know what's being delivered. I got this contract, and it's going to deliver something. I just know what, right? So some of these could be misused. I mean, I agree. But that's true for majority of this innovation. But we can sort of have guardrails around it. I mean, that's, I think, the job of this new committee, and which I'm really excited about.
No, I think you're right. I mean, there's always the opportunity for someone to abuse it, and the idea of guardrails is like spot on, because sometimes it would be like, oh, okay, you could get an instantaneous credit, but maybe there's some guardrail that says that there's some verification process it goes through before it becomes instantaneous. And those are the things that we have to think through, because we can have the best idea that's going to be the most beneficial thing, and someone will figure out a way to be able to weaponize it for a monetary purpose, and we have to just think through those things.
I agree with you. I think but we can definitely take advantage of the low-hanging fruits, like real, like honest cases. In my case, flight got delayed, I should get paid. I mean, I should not be, and in the end, I did get paid. I'm not saying they didn't pay me. It just took me 2 hours to get paid, right? And it should not be that difficult. I'll give you another example of real case in real estate market, setup. Like I'm from India, and there's a state called Andhra Pradesh, and the farmers were doing suicides. The reason being, some of these lands used to belong, like in the family line, and everyone knew who owns the land, but they did not have the piece of paper to prove that they own the land. And they were dependent on the rains. And if there's a bad season, they need to use the land to somehow feed their family. Now, the banks will not extend credit. No creditor would give them any money to survive during the environment. So during, right around COVID, the government used the blockchain technology and used the low-hanging fruit. Like, well, let's just go to the, like we call them gram panchayats, like the smallest unit of the government body, and anyone who knows about these land licenses, let's just start putting them on. If there's a conflict, we just deal with them later. But at least fix the issues that are really, really black and white. The gray areas are always going to be there, right? And so that helped some of these farmers instantly, right? So I'll give you last example. I know I might be running out of time here, but there's a lot of use cases that has already been in existence, and especially in like agriculture, and then we have a great speaker right after me sort of going to cover some of those things. But just to let you know, like the food we eat, do we know like where it's coming from, right? That's always going to be a kind of a trust issue. The one that I'm going to talk about is the one that I did for the US Department of Transportation. Right after COVID, the problem was the US Department of Transportation was anticipating that people who used to use public transports may not be as interested in using public transports after COVID because of the spread of the virus, right? So that would put more strain on our like roads, but as well as parking lots, right? So we sort of came up with this idea like, well, we can motivate people to use buses, public transport, and maybe ride shares and walking and biking using blockchain technology. And here's an example of how we did that. And here's, again, to answer your question, like gaming, systems can be gamed, but if you can somehow have this kind of a idea, like step 1 happens, then step 2, then step 3, we can actually hard code those steps. And that's easy part. That's what I see low-hanging fruit here. So here is like step-by-step process of how we can fix this problem of people sort of trying to drive more after COVID rather than using public transport or using alternate ways to get to commute to work. Here are 3 ways. First is like either you can sort of drive to work, or you can walk or bike to work, right? Or you can use public transport. So we'll create an app, and then the app tells you real-time data based on parking congestion, like how congested is the parking lot, and you'd have to pay this much amount of money at that point in time. You can reserve your parking. If you really want to drive, you reserve your parking, you pay that upfront cost. Now, part of that cost is then going to be redistributed to people who are going to pick the rest of the 2, walk or public transport. Sometimes the public transport could also feel the crunch, like, well, it's too much. It's a lot of stress on our system. In that case, we can change the price of the public transport up and down too. We can say, well, instead of using 8 a.m. bus, if you use 8:10, you'll get some reward, extra reward.
Flex time, like on the hot lanes where the price is
exactly.
Full.
Yes. But without the need of any intermediary, because it's all going to be part of blockchain, and it's going to track all of that in real time. And so ultimately, people can use different kind of modes, and they can generate some of benefits by using different, not only health benefits, but also wealth benefits in my situation. So that's all I have. If you have any question, I would be happy to answer.
One question before we get to Senator Salim. You mentioned that some countries have adopted Bitcoin as their official currency. How is that working for them in terms of volatility or their economies?
So El Salvador, I think, is one of them.
They used to have, when I visited El Salvador, the US dollar was their currency a number of years ago.
Yes.
Now they've got Bitcoin. Is that okay for their economy?
I mean, I agree. Like the previous question you asked about volatility, that's a real issue. The problem is not that Bitcoin has volatility. The problem, I think, in my opinion, is there is no one sort of moving things up and down for Bitcoin. There's no Federal Reserve here trying to control that volatility for Bitcoin. Now, one of the solutions that the crypto world came out with is a stable coin. The stable coins are generally pegged with against some kind of like a fiat or some kind of like treasury bonds, treasury securities, and so forth. Those have picked up significantly, and I could see them being used. Like you asked also some of the states that have been using, I think Wyoming is one of them, that use, like I can pay property taxes using cryptocurrencies in Wyoming. And they actually turn around and sell right away and convert it into fiat. But I think with the innovation of stablecoin, I could see that being a real use case in that situation.
Thank you. And if I could to ask last question, seriously, who made your PowerPoint? Did you do that?
I did. Yeah.
Okay. I wish I knew that, how to do that. Okay. Thank you for your presentation. It's very illuminating. Thank you.